I, 48F, watched my daughter, Maya, as she moved through the crowd in our backyard. Her graduation gown was unzipped, revealing the simple white dress underneath. Her smile was a beacon. It was the smile of someone who had not only met expectations, but had shattered them. She was valedictorian. She had a full scholarship to her dream university. My heart felt so full it was almost painful. My husband, Mark, came up behind me and wrapped his arms around my waist. He rested his chin on my shoulder. "You should be proud," he murmured into my ear. "I am," I said. "I'm so proud I could burst." "She earned every bit of this," he continued. "All those late nights, all that hard work, it paid off." I nodded, unable to speak for a moment. All the guests, our friends and family, were congratulating her, handing her cards, and telling her how bright her future was. It was a perfect day. Or it was, until my sister Clara made her way over to us. Clara was 2 years younger than me. She always carried herself with an air of competition that I had learned to ignore decades ago. Her son, Leo, had graduated from a different high school last week. It had been a much less celebrated affair. He had passed, and that was about it. "Well, Sarah," Clara said, her voice a little too loud. "It's a nice little party. Maya certainly looks happy." "Thank you, Clara," I said, keeping my tone even. "We're very happy for her." "It's good she got that scholarship," Clara went on, a thin smile on her lips. "College is so expensive these days. Leo is lucky he doesn't have to worry. His new business venture is already set to make a killing." I just nodded. Leo was always involved in some new business venture. They never seemed to materialize into anything concrete, but Clara spoke of them as if he were the next big tech billionaire. "He's very ambitious," Mark said politely. Clara's smile tightened. She looked over at Maya, who was now laughing with her grandparents, our parents. Then she looked back at me. Her eyes held a familiar, sharp glint of rivalry. "I always knew my child would be more successful," she said. It was not a shout, but it was clear and deliberate. Of guilt, fear, and something that looked horribly like pity. But the pity was not directed at me. It was directed at Clara. And that made no sense at all. In that moment, the perfect day cracked right down the middle. I excused myself from Mark and Clara. I needed a moment to breathe. I went inside the house, into the quiet of the kitchen. The insult itself was nothing new. Clara had been making comments like that my whole life. When I got married, she said her future husband would be wealthier. When I bought my house, she said her future home would be bigger. It was a tired, old song she sang. But my mother's reaction was new. It was a discordant note in a familiar, unpleasant melody. Why would she look guilty? Why would she look afraid? Pitying Clara after she had just delivered such a cruel line was baffling. I replayed the moment in my mind. Clara's smug superiority, my own flash of anger, and then my mother's face, pale and drawn. Mark came in a few minutes later. He closed the kitchen door behind him. "Are you okay?" he asked. "I'm fine," I said, leaning against the counter. "I'm just so tired of her. I'm tired of her constant need to turn everything into a competition." "I know," he said, his voice gentle. "She's always been that way." But today was a new low, saying that in front of everyone. "It's not just what she said," I told him. "Did you see Mom's face?" He frowned, thinking back. "No, I was too busy trying not to cause a scene by telling your sister exactly what I thought of her." "She looked guilty," I said, struggling to find the right word. "And scared. Like she knew something. Like Clara's comment wasn't just an insult, but something more." "What could be more?" Mark asked. "She was just being her usual jealous self." "Leo scraped by, and Maya is soaring. It's eating her alive, and she wants you to be as miserable as she is." He was probably right. That was the logical explanation. It was the explanation that had fit every other interaction with Clara for the past 40 years. but I couldn't shake the image of my mother's expression. It was the look of someone burdened by a secret that was somehow connected to Clara's boast about Leo. Walked to their car. My father waved cheerfully. My mother just kept walking, her shoulders hunched. The nagging feeling that something was deeply wrong began to grow into a certainty. Clara's cruelty was just a symptom. My mother's guilt was the disease, and I had a sudden, cold premonition that I was about to find out what it was. The next day, the house was quiet. Maya was out with her friends, celebrating their last summer together before they all scattered for college. The remnants of the party were all cleaned up. All that was left was a mountain of gift cards for Maya and a lingering sense of unease in my chest. I couldn't stop thinking about my mother's face. I decided to call my best friend, Jessica. She had been at the party. She knew my family dynamics as well as I did. "That was some party," she said when she answered. "Maya is just incredible. You must be floating." "I was," I said, until Clara opened her mouth. Jessica groaned. "I heard that. I was standing near the grill. What is wrong with her? Who says that at a kid's graduation party?" "You know Clara," I said. "If she's not the center of attention, she has to ruin it for whoever is." "True," Jessica agreed, "but that felt different. It was extra venomous. It's because Leo's success is all imaginary, and Maya's is real. You can't fake a valedictorian speech." "I know, but that's not what's bothering me," I said. "It was my mom. Did you see her after Clara said that?" There was a pause on the other end of the line. "You know, I did," Jessica said slowly. "I thought it was odd. She looked like she'd seen a ghost." "Exactly," I said, relieved that I wasn't the only one who had noticed. "She looked guilty and scared. Jessica, it was so strange. She's been enabling Clara's behavior our whole lives, but this was different. This wasn't just her usual, 'Oh, that's just Clara,' dismissal." "What do you think it means?" she asked. "I have no idea," I confessed, "but it feels like there's something going on. Something that involves my mom, Clara, and this supposed success of Leo's." Clara wasn't just being mean. She was boasting about something specific, and my parents' doorstep, holding a container of cake. I took a breath and rang the bell. My father answered, his usual cheerful self. "Sarah!" "What a nice surprise," he said, giving me a hug. Come in, come in. Your mother's in the sunroom." I walked through the familiar house. Nothing had changed in 30 years. The same photos on the wall, the same furniture. I found my mother sitting in her favorite armchair reading a book. She looked up when I entered, and her smile was a little too bright. "Sarah, dear, to what do we owe the pleasure?" she asked. "I brought you some of Maya's graduation cake," I said, setting the container on the table beside her. "Oh, that's lovely," she said, not looking at it. "It was such a wonderful party. You must be so proud." "I am," I said, sitting in the chair opposite her. "We had a great time. Well, mostly." Her eyes flickered. She knew what I was talking about. "Clara was a bit out of sorts," she said, her voice carefully neutral. "You know how she gets." "How she gets?" I repeated, keeping my own voice calm. "Mom, she insulted my daughter at her own party. She said her son was more successful. What did she even mean by that? What is this big success Leo has achieved?" My mother picked up her book and placed it in her lap, her fingers tracing the cover. "Oh, you know. He's working on some new app. Your sister is very excited about it. She's invested a lot in him." The way she said she's invested a lot in him sounded strange. It was a formal, almost rehearsed phrase. "She invested in him?" I asked. "With what money?" I thought her husband's business was struggling. My mother's face went pale. She looked cornered. "Well, you know, families help each other out," she said vaguely. "When a child has a brilliant idea, you want to support them." Now we were getting somewhere. "Did you help her, Mom?" I asked directly. "Did you give Clara money for Leo's business?" She flinched. "I may have helped a little," she mumbled, looking down at her hands. Just a small loan, to get him started. I felt a cold knot forming in my stomach. My parents were comfortable, but they weren't wealthy. They lived on of the stack was a bank statement, peeking out of its envelope. The return address was for a different bank than the one my parents usually used. An instinct took over. While my mother was looking away, her eyes misty with unshed tears, I reached over and casually picked up the mail. "What's this?" I asked, pretending to be sorting through it. "Oh, a statement from Capital Trust Bank." My mother's head snapped up. Her eyes were wide with panic. "Put that down, Sarah," she said, her voice trembling. "That's private." But it was too late. I had already pulled the statement from the envelope. I didn't even need to read the details. The summary on the front page was enough. It was a statement for a line of credit, a very large line of credit, and the balance was nearly maxed out. A six-figure number. I looked from the paper in my hand to my mother's terrified face. The knot in my stomach turned to ice. "Mom," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "What is this? What have you done?" She didn't answer. She just started to cry, silent tears rolling down her cheeks. And I knew with absolute certainty that this money had gone to Clara. This was the secret. This was the source of Leo's success and my mother's guilt. It wasn't a small loan. It was a devastating debt. My mother just sat there, weeping. My father came into the room, drawn by the silence that had fallen between us. "What's going on here?" he asked, looking from my face to my mother's. "Eleanor, what's wrong?" I held up the bank statement. My hand was shaking. "Dad, do you know about this? A line of credit from Capital Trust Bank?" He looked at the paper, then at my mother. His cheerful expression vanished. He looked tired, suddenly older than he had been just minutes ago. "I know about it," he said quietly. "And you were okay with this?" I asked, my voice filled with disbelief. "A loan this big? What was it for?" My father sighed and sat on the arm of my mother's chair. He put a hand on her shoulder. "We wanted to help Leo," he said. "Clara said he had a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, an investment. She promised she'd pay it all back as soon as the business took off." The business? Financial security. For one of Clara's get-rich-quick schemes. And the worst part was, they had kept it a secret from me. They had let Clara gloat, knowing that her bragging was funded by their life savings. "This is why you looked so guilty at the party," I said, the pieces clicking into place. "You knew she was using your money to insult me and Maya." My mother nodded, unable to speak. "We didn't want to cause trouble," my father said weakly. "Clara asked us to keep it quiet. She said she didn't want you to feel bad." "Not want me to feel bad?" I laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. "She wanted to lord it over me. That's all she's ever wanted. And you two handed her the ammunition to do it." I stood up. I couldn't sit there anymore. I felt betrayed. Not just by Clara, but by my parents. They had chosen her side. They had financed her cruelty. "I have to go," I said, my voice cold and distant. "Sarah, please," my mother begged. "Don't be angry." "Don't be angry?" I turned to face her. "You have taken on a huge amount of debt for a fake business for my nephew, a business he is apparently already successful at, and you hid it from me. Then you sat by and let my sister use it to hurt me and my child. And you want me not to be angry? I'm furious. But more than that, I'm disappointed." I walked out of the room. I didn't look back. I could hear my mother crying, my father trying to comfort her. I walked out of their house, the house I grew up in, and it felt like a foreign country. The trust that had always been the foundation of our family was gone. In its place was a secret, a debt, and a betrayal that was deeper than I could have ever imagined. I drove home in a daze. The conversation replayed in my head, each word a fresh sting. My parents, my sensible, careful parents, had been duped. Or maybe they hadn't been duped. Maybe they had willingly participated. The thought that they would favor Clara so blatantly, so destructively, was a wound I hadn't known I could receive. When I got home, Mark was in the living room, reading. He looked up as I came in. "How did it go?" he asked.
"Hand up, Sarah." They gave her a weapon, and she aimed it right at you and Maya. He was right. He saw it with a clarity that I was struggling to find through my hurt and confusion. "What do we do?" I asked. "What can I do? It's their money. They can do what they want with it, can't they?" "Legally, maybe," Mark said, leaning forward. "But this isn't just about money anymore. This is about their future. Is that line of credit secured against their house?" The question hit me like a physical blow. I hadn't even thought of that. "I don't know," I whispered. "Oh God, what if it is?" "We need to find out," he said, his tone shifting from angry to strategic. "We need to understand exactly what kind of financial situation they are in. Clara isn't going to pay that money back. We both know that. So your parents are on the hook for it. We need to know how bad it is." "How do we do that?" I asked. "My mom will never tell me the details. She's too ashamed and too scared of Clara." "Then we have to go around her," Mark said. "For her own good. You're their daughter. You have a right to be concerned about their welfare. We need to see the full picture." I thought about it. The idea of digging into my parents' private finances felt like a violation, but the alternative, letting them be dragged down into financial ruin by my sister's greed, was worse. This was no longer just about a family squabble. This was about protecting my parents from my sister and from themselves. "Okay," I said, a new resolve hardening inside me. "Okay, what's the first step?" "The first step," Mark said, "is to find out everything you can about this business. What's it called? Is it a real registered company? Or is it just a name Clara made up?" He was right. I needed facts. My anger and hurt were a fog. Facts would be a lighthouse. I thought back to my mother's words. She said it was an app, I recalled. She didn't mention a name. "Clara must have mentioned it," Mark said. "She loves to brag. Think back. Any parties, any holidays in the last year, she must have dropped a name." I closed my eyes, trying to filter through the noise of Clara's constant boasting. Christmas. That was it. She had been insufferable, at least, not in any official capacity. It's just a name. A story your sister told your parents to get their money. The cold, hard proof of it was right there on the screen. The business was a lie. The success was a lie. Everything was a lie. And my parents had mortgaged their future for it. The anger I had felt earlier returned, but this time it was different. It was cold and sharp. It was the anger of a protector. My parents had made a terrible mistake, and they couldn't see it. I would have to make them see. The next morning I called my father. I chose him deliberately. He was more practical than my mother, less prone to emotional reasoning. "Dad, it's Sarah," I said when he answered. "We need to talk. I'm coming over." "Sarah, your mother is very upset," he said, his voice weary. "Maybe we should let things cool down for a day or two." "No," I said, my tone leaving no room for argument. "This can't wait. I know something and you both need to hear it. I'll be there in 20 minutes. I didn't wait for a reply. I just hung up. When I arrived, my parents were sitting in the living room. My mother's eyes were red and puffy. My father looked like he hadn't slept. I didn't waste time on pleasantries. "I did some research last night," I began, standing in front of them. "I looked up Leo's company. Innovest." My mother flinched at the name. "It doesn't exist," I said plainly. "There is no company. There is no app. It's not a real business. There is no registration, no website, nothing. It's a name Clara made up." My father stared at me. "That can't be right," he said, shaking his head. "Clara showed us a business plan. It was very professional." "A business plan can be written by anyone, Dad," I said. "It doesn't make it real." "Did you ever see anything else? Any legal documents? Any proof of incorporation?" He looked at my mother, who just shook her head slowly, her gaze fixed on the carpet. "She said it was in the early stages," my father said, but his voice lacked conviction.
She said they were in stealth mode to protect the idea from competitors. Stealth mode, I repeated, the corporate jargon sounding agreement, I said, turning back to my father. The one for the line of credit. I need to know if you use the house as collateral. My father hesitated. He looked torn between his loyalty to my mother's desire for secrecy and the dawning horror of the situation. Please, Dad, I said, my voice softening. I'm not trying to punish you. I'm trying to help you. We have to know how bad this is so we can figure out what to do next. We are a family. We're supposed to protect each other. Let me protect you. That seemed to get through to him. He nodded slowly. It's in the study, he said, his voice heavy with defeat. In the filing cabinet. He got up and led me to the small room he used as an office. He opened a drawer and pulled out a thick folder. He handed it to me without a word. My hands trembled as I took it. This folder held the truth. It held the full extent of my sister's betrayal and my parents' folly. I took the folder, went back to the living room, and sat down to read it. I was about to uncover the full scope of the disaster. I opened the folder on the coffee table. My mother watched me with terrified eyes. My father stood by the window, his back to me. The silence in the room was heavy, broken only by the rustle of paper as I sorted through the documents. The first page was the loan application for the home equity line of credit. The amount approved was even larger than I had feared. It was a substantial portion of the value of their home, the home they had worked their entire lives to pay off. My breath caught in my throat. This wasn't just a bad decision. This was potentially ruinous. I kept reading. I found the agreement itself. The interest rate was variable, and it had already started to climb. The minimum monthly payments were manageable for now, but they were for interest only. The principal, the massive six-figure sum, was just sitting there, accumulating more interest every day. Then I found what I was looking for: the transfer records. There were several of them, made over the course of the last 8 months. Huge sums of money transferred directly from my parents' line of credit to a bank account. The account was in Clara's name. It all went to her, I said, my voice flat. Every penny, straight into her personal account. She said, designer. It was all a script, a carefully crafted performance to extract as much money as possible. But then, I found something else. It was a single sheet of paper, a printout of a budget. It looked like the business plan my father had mentioned. It had categories like software development, marketing outreach, legal fees. But the numbers were all round, perfect figures. 10,000 here, 25,000 there. It looked less like a real budget and more like a wish list. I looked at my mother. Mom, did you ever talk to Leo about this? Did he ever show you this app he was supposedly building? She shook her head. Clara said he was very busy. She did all the talking. She said he was the genius and she was managing the business side of things. Of course, Clara had isolated them from the one person who could have exposed the lie just by being himself. Leo was not a tech genius. He was a lazy, unmotivated young man who had learned from his mother that the world owed him a living. So you gave your life savings to Clara based on her word alone, I stated. It wasn't a question. My father finally turned around. His face was ashen. Yes, he said, we did. I closed the folder. I had seen enough. The facts were clear. There was no business. There was no investment. There was only Clara, siphoning money from our parents to fund a lavish lifestyle for herself and her son, all while crafting a narrative of success to rub in my face. We have to do something, I said. We have to stop this. What can we do? My mother cried. The money is gone. If we make a fuss, Clara will be ruined. Her husband will leave her. Her husband deserves to know he's married to a thief, I said, my voice hard. And right now, Mom, I'm not worried about Clara being ruined. I'm worried about you and Dad losing your house. The reality of my words finally seemed to penetrate her fear. Losing our house? She whispered. Yes, I said. You have a massive loan against it. What happens when the bank wants its money back? Clara isn't going to give it to them. Her business isn't going to magically produce a fortune. You will be responsible. And if you can't own sister? I want to explore our options, I corrected her. I want to know what's possible. We can't make a plan without information. She'll hate us, my mother wept. She'll never speak to us again. I looked her straight in the eye. Is that really such a bad thing, Mom? I asked. The question hung in the air, sharp and painful. My mother had no answer. I spent the rest of the afternoon with them. My father called the bank and put a freeze on the account. I found a reputable financial lawyer through Mark's company benefits program and made an appointment for the following week. I made copies of every single document in the folder. As I worked, my mother just sat there, looking lost and broken. I knew this was just the beginning. The easy part was uncovering the truth. The hard part would be confronting Clara. She wouldn't give up her comfortable, subsidized life without a fight. She would lie. She would manipulate. She would turn on our mother and paint herself as the victim. Before I left, I sat with my mother again. Mom, I know this is hard, I said gently. I know you love her, but love isn't supposed to be destructive. What Clara is doing isn't just hurting you financially, it's hurting our whole family. I just wanted her to be happy, she said. Clara will never be happy, I told her, because her happiness depends on having more than everyone else. It's a bottomless pit. You could pour all the money in the world into it, and it would never be enough. It's time to stop feeding her addiction. She looked at me, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of understanding in her eyes. It was a tiny spark, but it was there. Maybe, just maybe, she was starting to see. When I got home that evening, I spread the copies of the documents across our dining room table. Mark and I went through them together, piece by piece. This is worse than I thought, he said, shaking his head as he looked at the loan agreement. The interest rate is going to jump significantly after the first year. They won't be able to afford the payments. I know, I said. We have about 6 months before it gets critical. And these transfers? He said, pointing to the slips. All timed right after her emails full of fake updates. She was playing them like a fiddle. She's been terrified of the confrontation. I spent my time preparing. I organized the documents into a clear timeline. I wrote down a list of questions for the lawyer. I tried to anticipate Clara's every possible lie and prepare a factual rebuttal. Mark was my rock. He helped me role-play the conversations. Okay, I'm Clara, he'd say, putting on a whiny voice. But Mom, you promised. The investors are going to pull out if I don't show them the final payment. The investors don't exist, Clara, I'd practice saying, keeping my voice steady. I have the bank statements right here. The money didn't go to developers. It went to your car payment and your credit card bill. It felt absurd, rehearsing a family implosion in our living room. But Mark was right. I needed to be ready. I couldn't let my emotions get the better of me when the time came. I had to be cold, logical, and unmovable. The appointment with the lawyer, a woman named Miss Davis, was enlightening and sobering. We sat in her quiet, professional office, and I laid out the story from the beginning. I showed her the copies of the loan agreement, the transfer slips, the emails. She listened intently, her face impassive. When I finished, she took a deep breath. Well, she said, this is a classic case of what we call familial financial exploitation. The term sent a chill down my spine. It sounded so clinical, so much more serious than just a family squabble. What are my parents' options? I asked. There are a few paths, she explained. Legally, the money transferred could be considered a gift, a loan, or the result of fraud. Given these emails and the deceptive business plan, a case could be made for fraud. Fraud. I repeated the word. It felt heavy. It's a serious accusation, Ms. Davis cautioned. It would involve filing a police report. It could lead to criminal charges against your sister. I thought of my mother. The shame and horror of having one daughter arrested for defrauding her would be too much to bear. What about a civil case? Mark asked. Could they sue to get the money back? They could, Ms. Davis said. They could sue for repayment of the loan. The challenge would be proving it was a loan and not a gift. Clara will almost certainly claim it was a gift. Your parents' willingness to keep giving her money, her husband, her friends, Do they know where it's coming from? No, I said immediately. Her husband thinks her family is well off and that she's a savvy investor. Her friends think she's just lucky. Exactly, Ms. Davis said. The threat of exposing that lie is your most powerful tool. We can draft a letter, a formal demand for repayment, outlining the evidence we have. We will state that if a payment plan is not agreed to within a certain time frame, your parents will be forced to pursue all available legal options, including civil litigation and reporting the matter to the authorities for potential fraud. So we confront her, I said. You confront her with the full weight of the law behind you, Ms. Davis corrected. You don't just ask for the money back. You demand it, and you show her the consequences if she refuses. We left the lawyer's office with a clear plan. Ms. Davis would draft the letter, but she advised me that it would be more powerful if we tried one last time to handle it within the family. A formal legal letter is an escalation, she said. First, you need to have a direct confrontation. You, your parents, and your sister. Lay all the cards on the table. If she refuses to cooperate, then we send the letter. The thought of that meeting filled me with dread. It would be the ugliest, most painful conversation of my life, but it was necessary. That evening, I called my parents. I've spoken to a lawyer, I told them. I have a plan, but it requires all of us to be in the same room with Clara. We need to have a family meeting. There was a long silence on the other end. I don't know if I can do that, Sarah, my mother finally said, her voice trembling. You have to, I said, my voice firm but not unkind. We all have to. This is the only way. We give her one chance to make this right. If she doesn't take it, then we move on to the next step. But you have to be there to show her that you are done being her bank. When? My father asked, his voice resigned. This Sunday, I said. I'll tell her we're having a family dinner at your house. I won't tell her what it's about. We need her to show up. The plan was set. The trap was laid. For the next 3 days, I felt a knot of anxiety tighten in my stomach. Wrong. I tried to make a transfer for one of Leo's business expenses, and it was declined. I called Mom, and she was very weird about it. Did you say something to her? Here it was, the first probe. What would I have said? I asked calmly. I don't know, she snapped. Something to upset her. You've always been jealous of my relationship with her. The audacity of it took my breath away. Is that what you think this is about, Clara? Jealousy? What else would it be? She said. You can't stand that Leo is successful. You always have to be the center of attention with your perfect daughter and her perfect grades. I took a deep breath. I would not get drawn in. Not yet. We're having a family dinner at Mom and Dad's tomorrow night, I said, changing the subject. You should come. We can all talk then. She was suspicious. A dinner? Why? What are we talking about? Just family stuff, I said vaguely. Mom wants everyone there. 6 o'clock. Fine, she said, her voice clipped. I'll be there, and you and I are going to have a talk about whatever you said to Mom. She hung up. I stood there, my heart pounding. She knew something was up. She was coming armed for a fight. Good, I thought. So am I. Sunday arrived, gray and overcast, matching my mood. Mark and I drove to my parents' house early. I wanted to be there to support them. My mother was a nervous wreck. She was fluttering around the kitchen, needlessly rearranging things. My father was sitting silently in the living room, staring out the window. Are you ready for this? I asked him. He nodded slowly. I don't want to do it, he said. But I know we have to. You were right. This has gone on long enough. Just stick to the facts, I told him and my mother. Don't let her distract you with insults or accusations. We just present the information and we state our demand. Our demand was simple. A legally binding agreement for Clara to repay the full amount, starting with monthly payments that would, at a minimum, cover the interest on the line of credit. It was more than fair. It was generous. At 6 o'clock on the dot, the doorbell rang. My stomach lurched. Clara was here. Her husband, Tom, and Leo were with her. I hadn't counted on them coming. Dinner. Thank you all for coming, I began, my voice much steadier than I felt. We're not actually here for dinner. We're here because we need to discuss a serious financial matter. Tom looked confused. Leo didn't even look up from his phone. Clara, however, sat up straighter. Her expression hardened. "I knew it," she said, pointing a finger at me. "You've been poisoning them against me." "This has nothing to do with me poisoning anyone," I said calmly. "This has to do with a six-figure line of credit that Mom and Dad took out against their house." Tom's head snapped toward Clara. "A line of credit? What are you talking about?" "It's nothing, Tom," Clara said quickly, shooting him a warning look. "It's just a small family loan." "It's not a small loan, Clara," I said, and I reached for the folder I had placed on the coffee table. I opened it and took out the top sheet, a summary I had prepared. "It is a loan for $250,000, and it has all been transferred directly into your personal bank account over the past 8 months." The room went silent. Tom stared at Clara, his mouth slightly open. Leo finally looked up from his phone, his eyes wide. "What?" Tom said, his voice a hoarse whisper. $250,000? "She's lying," Clara spat, her eyes flashing with panic. "She's making it up. Mom, tell them she's lying." She turned to our mother. This was the moment of truth. My mother looked at Clara, her face a mask of anguish. For a second, I thought she was going to break. I thought she was going to fold and take Clara's side. But then she looked at me, and at my father. She took a shaky breath. "It's true, Clara," my mother said, her voice barely audible. "The money is all gone." Clara looked as if she'd been slapped. The betrayal in her eyes was almost comical. She had expected my mother to protect her, as she always had. "How could you?" Clara shrieked, turning on our mother. "After everything I've done for this family. I was building a future for all of us." "What future, Clara?" I interjected, my voice cutting through her hysterics. "There is no business. There is no Innovest. It doesn't exist. It was a lie you told." Dangerously low. "Did you take $250,000 from your parents?" "It was an investment, Tom," she pleaded. "For Leo. For our future." "Our future? Or your new car, and your designer bags, and our trip to Italy?" he asked, his voice getting louder with each question. "I thought your investments were paying off. I thought you were some kind of financial genius." "I am," she insisted. "No," he said, shaking his head slowly. "You're a liar. And you're a thief. You stole from your own parents." He looked at my parents. "I am so sorry," he said, his voice thick with shame. "I had no idea. I swear I had no idea." "It's not your fault, Tom," my father said quietly. Clara seemed to realize she was losing, that her whole world was crumbling. She changed tactics. She turned on me, her face contorted with rage. "This is your fault," she screamed. "You've always been jealous of me. You couldn't stand to see me and my son succeed. You had to tear us down. I'm standing here, and she is screaming at me. The sound is shrill. It fills the entire living room. I feel Mark's hand on my back, a small, steady pressure. My mother is crying again, but this time it's different. Her tears are not for Clara. They are for the wreckage in front of her. "This isn't about jealousy, Clara," I say, and my voice is calm. "It feels like it belongs to someone else. This is about accountability." "Accountability?" she scoffs, a wild look in her eyes. "You wouldn't know the first thing about it. You, with your perfect little life, your perfect little daughter. You've never had to fight for anything." I feel a surge of anger, hot and powerful. "I fought for my daughter to have a good life," I say, my voice rising. "I worked hard. Mark and I saved. We made sacrifices. We didn't steal from our aging parents to fund a fantasy." The word steal hangs in the air. Tom flinches. Leo shrinks into the couch. Clara's face goes white with rage. "You take that back," she seethes. "No," I say. "I am no longer scared. I am no longer hurt. I am—" That Miss Davis's office had helped me draft. "You are going to sign this agreement tonight," I continue. "It outlines a payment plan. It's fair. It's manageable. It will cover the interest on the loan so Mom and Dad don't lose their house. If you sign it, we can handle this as a family." If you don't, I let the threat hang in the air. If I don't, what? She challenges, a flicker of her old defiance returning. You'll sue me? You won't. Mom would never allow it. She looks at our mother, expecting her to nod in agreement, to save her one last time. But my mother looks at the repayment agreement. She looks at my father's defeated face. She looks at the life they built, hanging in the balance. Yes, she will, Clara, my mother says, her voice shaking but firm, and I will allow it. This ends now. The finality in her voice is absolute. It's the sound of a 40-year-old spell being broken. Clara stares at her, utterly defeated. The last of her power, the power she held over our mother, has vanished. Tom picks up the agreement. He reads it quickly. He looks at Clara. You're signing this, he says. It's not a request. And we are selling the house. We are selling the cars. We are done. Clara opens her mouth to protest, but he cuts her off. We are done, Clara. This life you built on lies, it's over. He walks over to the desk in the corner, finds a pen, and clicks it. He puts the agreement and the pen in front of his wife. Clara looks around the room, at all our faces. There is no sympathy here for her, no escape route. She is trapped by the truth. Her shoulders slump. With a trembling hand, she takes the pen and signs the paper. The aftermath was quiet and swift. Clara and her family left without another word. Tom's final look at me was one of deep, weary gratitude. As soon as the door closed behind them, my father let out a long, shaky breath. My mother just sat on the sofa, looking at the signed agreement on the table as if it were a bomb that had finally been diffused. It's over, she whispered. It's the beginning, I said gently. The beginning of fixing it. In the weeks that followed, a decent man who had been deceived just as much as my parents had. Clara moved into a small, bleak apartment. She had to get a job, a real one, for the first time in over a decade. She worked as a cashier at a department store. I heard from a cousin that she complained constantly, blaming me for ruining her life. My parents began the slow process of recovery. With the large payment from Clara's house sale, they were able to pay down most of the principal on the line of credit. The monthly payments she was forced to make covered the rest. They wouldn't lose their home. Their retirement was damaged, but not destroyed. The biggest change was in my mother. The guilt and fear she had carried for so long were replaced by a quiet strength I had never seen before. She stopped making excuses for Clara. She stopped trying to keep the peace at the expense of honesty. One afternoon, a month or so after the confrontation, she came over to my house. She brought a small plant as a gift. I wanted to apologize, Sarah, she said as we sat in my kitchen. Properly. I failed you. I was so afraid of losing Clara that I didn't realize I was hurting you. I let her use me to hurt you. And that is unforgivable. I was hurt, Mom, I admitted, but I understand. You were trying to be a good mother. No, she said, shaking her head. A good mother doesn't enable one child to harm the other. A good mother protects both her children. It took me a long, long time to learn that. I'm sorry it took this disaster for me to see it. I reached across the table and took her hand. I forgive you, Mom, I said, and I meant it. Our family was smaller now, and broken in some ways. The holidays would be different. The easy, comfortable gatherings were a thing of the past. But what was left felt more real. It was built on truth, not on secrets and lies. My daughter, Maya, thrived at college. She called me one night, a few months into her first semester. I'm so happy, Mom, she said, her voice bubbling with excitement about her classes and her new friends. Thank you for everything, for working so hard so I could have this chance. Tears welled in my eyes. You earned it, sweetie, I said. You earned. I was sitting on the porch. The air was cool and crisp. Do you ever feel guilty? I asked him quietly. About how it all fell apart? He thought for a moment. No, he said. I don't. Things didn't fall apart. They were rearranged into the shape they should have been in all along. The lies were cleared away. What's left is real. He was right. The peace I felt was real. The pride I had in my daughter was real. The love I had for my husband and my parents was real. The revenge wasn't loud or explosive. It was quiet. It was the satisfaction of seeing the scales finally balance. Clara always said that some people were just born with an instinct for success. Perhaps she was right, but she had never understood that true success isn't about what you can take from others. It's about what you can build for yourself. She had learned that lesson the hard way. I didn't feel sorry for her. I just felt free. She had finally learned what it feels like to be small, and I had learned how strong I was.